Balkan Threads is a podcast powered by Bunker that invites listeners to see the Balkans beyond political borders and stereotypes. I am your host, Lazar Tripinovic, and in each episode, I talk with guests from across the region to share their personal stories. Together, we will explore the Balkans as a shared flow of traditions, experiences, and ideas. We will open today's episode with a quote from Hermann Hesse's Siddhartha. I have always believed, and I still believe, that whatever good or bad fortune may come our way, we can always give it meaning and transform it into something of value.
Dear listeners, welcome to the second episode of the podcast Balkan Threads. Today, we are here with Mirjana Gabric. Hi Mira, how are you doing?
Hi, Lazar. I'm doing very well, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to have you. I'm really excited to have this conversation because you come from a part of Serbia called Vojvodina, which I dearly love. Um, Vojvodina is really known for multiculturalism. If I'm not wrong, there's around 26 different ethnicities that live there, 6 official languages. And I want to say really, when I think of Vojvodina, I think of stereotypes of really like peace and coexistence and slow life. And your city, Subotica, is in the very, very north of the country, but also the region. And is particularly multicultural, if I may say so. So, can you tell us a little bit more how are Vojvodina and Subotica distinct? What makes them special, and um, what different ethnicities live in both of those?
Yes, of course, you made a very good intro. If I would have to kind of explain to someone what is the significance of Vojvodina and Subotica, I would definitely start with the fact that we need to take in context, like the geopolitical context of its location, because it's placed currently at the north of Serbia, but throughout the history, it has always been in a very atypical situation. It's placed right at the border to Central Europe. So it was always a place and a home to many different people, as it is today. And as you said, we are a place of many many different ethnicities and minorities. First of them, like the most, I think Serbians are, of course, number one, and then you have Hungarians right after them, Romani people, Slovaks, Croatians, Romanians at the border, Montenegrins, Rusians, even Macedonians, Germans, and Bulgarians, and there are some even Ukrainians from way back. So this place really, when you take that in count, you can see that there are a lot of different people that have been living at a very small place. So I would definitely say that, what kind of constitutes the identity of these people is that they put great value in unity. Because, well, historically speaking, even though I don't want to go like in depths and I don't want to bore people because I'm not a historian, but they were faced with many problems, but they were also pushed to rely on each other and to fight together in order to keep alive, in order to save the province. So it's something definitely that you can still see, especially through multiculturalism that is still very much alive, but also to coexistence that's also alive as well.
And what is particular about the multiculturalism? Because in different places, multiculturalism can take a different form. So how does it actually work in Vojvodina? Like, is it that everybody has their own identity and then at the same time cherishes a common identity? Is it that identity of Vojvodina surpasses the national identity, or how does that yeah, how does that work?
That's a very good question. I can speak from my own kind of from my own view, and I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't go too politically into it. I would more share like a human side of it, if that's okay, because I would say
Yes,
that
of course.
multiculturalism in Vojvodina I would describe very poetically, and like a meal tastes better when it's shared. And I feel like Vojvodina is a very open to this neighborly bond, open. It has a very open hands, like an invitation to be part of each other's lives. And I view it as like three levels of communication that goes between these different communities. First of all, it's respect. Then I would say that's engaging in one each other's lives. And the third level is embracing. I think that is what definitely makes this coexistence alive.
I really love how you put it because I think that I have never thought of it exactly in those words, but now that you're saying that, I feel like that makes perfect sense. And also why I love Vojvodina. Growing up, I would spend my summers in one part of that region, but I am not like a true Vojvođanin, if that makes sense.
Right.
But I always felt that ability to participate in everything, which is not the case everywhere. It's not the case everywhere in Serbia. It's not the case everywhere in Europe. And now that makes perfect sense why I always really felt welcome and started loving it. And I'm sure that's a big part of life in Subotica because in Subotica, about one third of people are Hungarians, one third are Serbs, and one third are Croatian. And that is something that for any visitor is definitely very evident in language, in churches, in monuments. So tell us a little bit more about just is everyday life in Subotica and those interactions, but also about some maybe more specific traditions and also traditions that you participated in as a child or with your family.
I'm very happy that I feel like you're trying to say you felt welcomed in Vojvodina. I feel very happy to hear that because that is like a true feeling that I think we try to make. Yeah, that is what we want or how we want people to feel. But one interesting like anecdote that you may go through if you go to Subotica is if you go to a market, people will first talk to you in Hungarian and then they will talk to you in Serbian. And it's not just there, it's in many other places, which I think to me it was completely normal while growing up to be surrounded by two extremely different languages. Or you are also able to go to school and learn in Hungarian or learn in Croatian. You have complete right to do so. So I think this is one of those everyday things that is very important, and it thus is completely normal. That sense of respect again for each other, and also, like, I don't know, that engagement that comes off completely naturally. But one specific tradition that I would like to specifically talk about is definitely Dužianca, because I am Croatian, and this is particularly a Croatian tradition, or I would say annual tradition, which is quite special to us because it's, well, specifically, I could describe it as like Thanksgiving ceremony for the harvested wheat. So it is just a way to say thank you to God for all the luck that people had in their work here, specifically, of course, in their farming, and as a thank you for the year that's coming. But it's very interesting, and it's like that one thing that happens every single summer, and it's not just inherently, tied to creations. The whole city becomes alive. So it has this, again, multiple layers. It has a religious aspect, it has a cultural aspect, it has a very important aspect to the city because it draws people and the tourism goes up. So again, I don't think that this would all be possible if there was a mutual respect to it.
Specific practices do you do during that period, and what month does it take place in? So if some of our listeners would like to visit Subotica, when should they come to experience that?
So it starts during summer. I'm not sure when exactly, what is the date, but it starts in villages around Subotica, and then in August, and like I think first weekend of August, it ends with a huge celebration, 3-day celebration from Friday to Sunday, which ends with this mass of, yes, like thankful mass, or like a general celebration of all of the people that were part of this working year. And so particularly, it goes on for almost whole the summer.
What do people do? Like, are there specific games or songs tied to that, or are there specific festivals?
First, there's the most important, I would say, factor is religious. So Sundays, every single Sunday, there is a mass dedicated to that. But apart from that, you have the cultural aspect. So they're like organized special events, which are mainly focused on traditional dances or traditional singings and traditional artwork. So it's like a general traditional festivity where you can see the way that people used to celebrate the end of the work year. For them, that was the summer, but now you just kind of celebrate the tradition of it. Yeah, I would definitely recommend for people to, if they're interested, to visit the ending celebration in Subotica, because there everybody gathers and it's a much bigger celebration. Especially the mass, it's beautiful. It takes place in the cathedral, and there's this huge procession towards the town's town hall. And then in the evening, there's I would call it a celebratory dance where anybody can join. Like you dance in a circle and people are passing by, and they're very much welcome to join. So I think it's like this general celebration, but open, yet again, openness to other people. Whoever feels invited can join.
That is really wonderful. And I guess I have one more question about Subotica before we start our next topic, and that would be something more I'm gonna say legal in just the absence of a better word, and that is just like, how does multilingualism work in practice? Like you mentioned school, like you mentioned you can go to school in different languages, or if you go to market, um, people might refer to in Hungarian, but just how does it work in practice? In Vojvodina, you take that for granted because it's just like everywhere around you, right? But for somebody who is not from that region, it might sound like complicated to manage. So that's why I just like interesting access, like, how does it work? For example, you have different friends who study in different languages and, or just who simply communicate in different languages in their store.
If somebody wants to, they will manage it, because I have no other explanation. To me, it's the most normal thing ever, because I had Hungarian friends when I was a little kid. We could not speak each other's languages, but we understood each other. Even later on, if you meet, you may meet a lot of adults who cannot speak Hungarian, but they know a couple of words, and you know a couple of words in Hungarian, and you go by. On the legal side, it's very well, if they need, if it happens that they need a translator, the state provides it, or the other way around. It's, in my eyes, it's completely, if you look at it in Subotica, it's completely normal, sorry, but it may be become a challenge if you try to live like this outside of Subotica, where people are used to it. So I cannot comment on that. But again, I see it as a form of, respect to the other person, because you are learning to coexist. And yeah, coexist in peace and respect. If there is mutual respect, it goes completely fine without any particular trouble.
I think that's a really good takeaway. If I had a marker, I would highlight it. I love that. And I think it's a perfect segue for the second part of our conversation, where I want to reflect a little bit on Prizren. So you and I met during DocuFest in Prizren last summer. And Prizren was also really interesting for me. And I saw some parallels between Subotica I saw some parallels between Subotica. They have relatively similar population. Their geography is pretty interesting because it said Subotica is kind of on the border, like it's a gateway to Central Europe, right? It's kind of like Balkans towards Central Europe. And Prizren is really like Central Balkans towards Southern Balkans. Like even weather-wise, right? Like in some ways it has this like continental central climate, but it's also already getting a little bit of the Mediterranean one. And most important for our conversation, it's also a multicultural city. Apart from Albanian majority, there's also Bosnian population, still some Serbs and Montenegrins, Goranci, which we'll talk a little bit about after, and Turkish population. So there's also that interesting mixture there. So I'm really curious to see from your perspective, how did just multiculturalism and common identity in Prizren compare, or how is it different from the one in Subotica?
I love this question because it kept me up at nights, because I was thinking like, oh, like I felt I fell in love with Prizren, if I can be honest. And when I was trying to think about, oh, what are some similarities, or like, can I draw a parallel between these two cities or towns? And I was like, I was so stuck in a place. And then I thought, okay, in my opinion, they are completely different. Like, completely. First of all, they run by a different rhythm. And of course, obviously, but they're so unique in that way. I would say that both of them, Prizren and Subotica, are a perfect example of two cities that mirror their natural landscapes and the surroundings history. I think they are just a great example of that, as you mentioned, and the climate and the surroundings, and as well their locations. They are also, like, I think they are examples of two places that also have the weight of being placed by, well, a border or a semi-border, but being placed in like a middle of a location, like where they're not centralized. So they are an example of preserving a cultural significance of a certain time, or like a different influences that were present or just passed by. And I also think because where they are placed, they have this significance of multiculturalism. Even though that is the similarity, as you said, the multiculturalism is similarity, but they're completely different. And I think the uniqueness makes them different, and I think it's amazing and it's beautiful, because they are the example of how multiculturalism and coexistence can run in different environments.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I'm purposely just referring to these two cities because, as you said, I feel they're so unique that they really need to be discussed as like units of their own, if I may say so. And I'm curious to hear, what did you mean about the difference in rhythm between the two cities?
I mean, I saw it as I come from I come from Vojvodina, and I come from Subotica, right, where it's completely, geographically speaking, it's completely flat. Like we only have fields of wheat, and we speak very slow, and we, it's a slower rhythm. And I love to go into like these mountains, like to countryside, which is completely different. And this is what I felt in Prizren. You can feel the flow of water. You can feel, they are so authentic in the sense of keeping up the rhythm of the nature in the same way that we are, but of course it's completely different. And I was just amazed by that.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Nature in the south of Kosovo is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm also interested. So we mentioned some of the people that live in Prizren, and most of those people don't live in Vojvodina, right? So there's like definitely like a geographical distance between those two. How is that for you, like traveling just to like a different part of the Balkans? Like, was there like a certain level of cultural discovery? Did you feel like you kind of had to adjust to the local mentality?
I mean, I wouldn't say adjust. Again, I think the multiculturalism from my own environment is something that I it kind of made me inhabit nature of adapting very easily. To me, the only problem was, as I spoke, the rhythm. It was like too fast because I come from a much slower pace. So I was like, that was the only problem. But no, I was exactly the coexistence again of the people there. They were also very open-handed. They were welcoming. So it was a perfect environment to also, just become familiar with something new. Very welcoming to become familiar with something new.
I think that's a really good point. People that grow up in multicultural environments do have um, a certain set of skills that I really have to say I always really admired. Because as much as I grew up in Belgrade, which is definitely like the largest city in the region, that skill doesn't come with being raised there. So I always really admired people who have that. Um, and having said that, I'll pivot a little, I'll go back to the conversation on Prizren because there's something really particular about both of those cities, and that is that they're home to small nations, Guarani and Bunyat. And that is really interesting for me because a lot of people actually don't really know much about them, which I was really surprised by. Guarani are people who live around the Shar mountain. Okay? And Prizren is really the largest city in that region. So for many of them, that is really their home. And they are Slavic people who are Muslim. And they have a lot of traditions that, due to the environment they live in, overlap with the Albanian traditions. And I feel like for that reason, maybe a lot of people like connect them with like other ethnicities from that region. But they really have like their own distinct identity and traditions and their own dialect. And it was really interesting for me in Prizren to get to know a little bit more about those people and to actually get to interact. And I think it made me even more appreciate this like Balkan diversity, where it is so clear how much like traditions and identity can surpass expectations. And I'm mentioning that as a parallel also to the Bunyati people of Bachka region, which crosses from Serbia to Hungary, whose main city is Subotica. Could you tell us a little bit more about Bunyati people?
Yes, of course, because I'm one of them. Well,
Perfect.
yeah. Well, they are a South Slavic sub-ethnic group of Croats who, as you said, live mostly in the region of Bachka. They came, well, as a result of the Ottoman conquest, they migrated from like Western Herzegovina to Dalmatia, and then in 17th century they came to Bachka. And I know that my ancestors came in like They came in 17th century and they stayed there. So, I mean, as I said, they're ethnically Croatians. It's amazing that from 17th century until now, they kept their tradition. We, I better say we, speak in with Ikavian dialect. That's something that's very interesting because it's a bit distinct than mainly most of the speakers in the Bačka region. But
Can you just tell us, for people who don't know much about Serbo-Croatian, what is Ikavian dialect? Or where is it spoken, I guess? That would make it easier.
Of course. It's a dialect which is mostly spoken in like the Bosnian Dalmatian region. So you would hear it. Yes, exactly. It is primarily spoken by Croats in Croatia, and specifically in Dalmatia. So, to hear that in like a small town up north with the border of Hungary, at like a market where you can hear Hungarian, to hear like this Ikavian dialect, it's like this surreal scenario, but it's real. And I think also most people in the region have someone who their grandmother or their great somebody was Bunjevac by their ethnicity. So it's completely normal. It's not unusual to hear people speak still that way. So as we spoke about Tužijance, that is something that is also celebrated by Bunjevci, and it's inherently, an extremely important traditional part of their life. Even people who don't know about Bunjevci or who don't know about this celebration in general, to visit and to come and see what this is all about, because this is a tradition that's been running for, I think, like more than 100 years. Definitely more than 100 years. And yeah, you won't see it anywhere else. Definitely.
Perfect. And to conclude, do you have anything that you would like to share with our listeners?
If I wasn't perhaps maybe able to sum up a like short history of Vojvodina in the best way possible, I would definitely recommend a short documentary called Healthy People for Fun by Kak Pocimovic. It's a short documentary which portrays the ethnic minorities which were living in the Yugoslavian province of Vojvodina, and it shows them living in a harmonious coexistence. It's a film from the 70s, but it's a very cute, short documentary, and I think that people will find it charming and informative.
So, Healthy People for Fun. Okay, and where can we find it? On YouTube or somewhere else?
Yes, you can find it on YouTube. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this conversation. I had a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and it was really a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Lazar, for having me. You're a wonderful host, and I hope we get to talk sometime soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.